The late autumn sun cast long, golden fingers across the quiet valley of Millstone Ridge, a patch of forgotten countryside that had somehow escaped the fever of suburban expansion. My land sat at the bottom of that ridge, 100 acres of oak and stone in silence. My name is Evan Carter, and for the first time in a decade, I thought I'd found peace. I'd left Chicago 2 years ago after a messy divorce and a career that bled me dry: engineering contracts, politics, deadlines, you name it. Out here, the only schedules were sunrise and sunset. I rebuilt an old farmhouse my grandfather once owned, restored the barn, and fenced the property line down to the last survey inch. Across that fence lay Briarwood Estates, a brand new HOA development with glossy brochures and pastel-colored homes that all looked cloned. Their board president, Karen Whitmore, lived in the biggest house, perched on the hill like a queen above her manicured domain. The kind of woman who corrected people for calling her ma'am instead of Mrs. Whitmore. For months, we'd kept our distance. She didn't like my unkempt rural aesthetic, as she once put it. I didn't care for her constant flyers demanding I keep the roadside visually consistent with the community. My driveway was gravel, hers was pavers. 2 worlds, 1 fence. Then, one crisp morning in November, I saw the backhoe. It was parked halfway between her property and mine, engine rumbling, its bucket buried deep in the earth right along my fence line. 2 workers in yellow vests were feeding a thick orange pipe into the trench. I leaned on the fence and called out, "You boys lost?" The older one looked up, wiped his forehead. "Gas line expansion, sir." "Approved work order." "Approved by who?" I asked. He thumbed toward the hill. "Your HOA president, ma'am, I mean, Mrs. Whitmore. Said she coordinated everything." I froze. "That line runs through my land." He shrugged, uneasy. "You'll have to talk to her. We're just following the map." I walked the line, the trench snaked 30 feet inside my fence. My property. My soil. My fence posts, dug up and tossed aside like weeds. By noon, I was standing at her marble doorstep, mud still on my boots. She opened the door with a smirk already loaded. "Mr. Carter," she said, "too sweet. To what do I owe this visit? You're digging a gas line through my property." Her smile didn't flinch. "Technically, it's part of the community infrastructure expansion. It benefits everyone. You should be thanking us. You'll get access to municipal gas service once it's done." "I don't need gas service," I said. "I've got my own tanks." "And you didn't ask for permission." She crossed her arms. "The board approved it. And according to our boundary map." "Your HOA doesn't control my land," I snapped. "This fence marks the legal boundary. You went 30 feet over." For a moment, her face cracked, a flicker of guilt, maybe surprise, then she recovered. "Well, we can discuss reimbursement or adjustments later. The contractor's already started, and halting construction now would cost the HOA thousands." "That's not my problem," I said, stepping back. "You tell them to stop, or I will." Her tone turned icy. "Mr. Carter, hostility won't get you anywhere. We're neighbors." "Not for long," I said. That night, I called the county records office. The next morning, a surveyor came out, Rick Malone, an old friend of my late father's. We spent 4 hours marking stakes, measuring twice. The results were exact. The HOA gas line cut 42 feet into my land. I filed an immediate cease and desist notice with the county and the gas company. Construction stopped the next day. But Karen wasn't done. 2 days later, she showed up again, this time with a man in a suit and a smug grin that matched hers. "This is David Crowley, HOA legal counsel," she said. "We'd like to resolve this amicably." "Amicably?" I said. "You trespassed and dug up part of my property." Crowley smoothed his tie. "According to our maps, there's ambiguity in the old survey line. The HOA acted in good faith. Mrs. Whitmore proposed compensation, a formal easement and a $3,000 payment." I laughed. $3,000 for 40 feet of pipeline? Try again." He closed his folder. "Then we'll see you in court." And just like that, they left. That night, I stood by the trench with a flashlight. The orange pipe gleamed faintly under the beam. A chill wind rustled through the dry grass, whispering through the broken fence line. This was more than a mistake. It was a move. I didn't know it yet, but Karen Whitmore had no intention of backing down. She was going to make me pay in court, in public, in every way she could. And I was about to teach her what happens when you push a man who's already lost everything once. Because this land wasn't just property. It was the last piece of peace I had left. And I wasn't going to lose it again. Winter settled over Millstone Ridge like a slow, heavy blanket. The oak trees stood bare, the sky stayed the color of steel, and the trench on my property filled with frozen rainwater that reflected the cold light of December. The HOA gas line sat silent beneath it, an ugly scar that refused to heal. For a few weeks, I heard nothing. No construction crews, no letters, just the soft crack of frost underfoot when I walked the fence each morning. I started to think maybe Karen had realized her mistake. Maybe it would all just fade into some legal gray zone and disappear. Then the envelope came. It was taped to my gate, sealed in a glossy folder stamped with the Briarwood Estates logo, gold and green. Inside was a civil complaint, the Briarwood Estates Homeowners Association versus Evan Carter. They were suing me. The claim was absurd. The HOA alleged that my interference with a community infrastructure project had caused financial damages, delayed municipal gas service, and created unsafe environmental conditions by leaving the line exposed. They wanted $75,000 in damages and a permanent easement to keep the pipeline where it was. I remember standing there in the cold, the paper trembling in my hands, not from fear but from disbelief. Karen's signature sat at the bottom of the affidavit. Her looping, perfect handwriting like a dagger through my name. She'd done it. She'd turned her mistake into my problem. I spent the next few days calling lawyers. Most didn't want to touch it. HOA disputes get ugly, they said. You'll bleed money before you see justice. One firm even suggested I take the settlement offer $5,000 this time and just move on. But that wasn't an option. Not after what she'd done. Finally, I found Laura Mendoza, a property attorney from Des Moines. She spoke with the calm confidence of someone who'd fought this kind of war before. After reviewing the case, she looked up from the stack of papers and said, "Mr. Carter, this isn't just trespassing. This is a deliberate encroachment. They tried to seize land through an HOA loophole. Can we win?" Her lips tightened into a small, fierce smile. "If your documentation's solid, yes. But Karen's playing politics. She's got the local board, the city inspector, even the gas company whispering in her ear. You'll need more than truth, you'll need proof." I had proof. Photos. The original survey. County maps. And a drone video I'd filmed when the backhoe first broke ground timestamped, with GPS coordinates showing the trench cutting deep into my property. Laura's eyes brightened when she saw it. "This," she said, "is gold." We filed a counterclaim: trespassing, property damage, and unauthorized utility installation. Within a week, the story hit the Millstone Gazette. Local HOA president faces property dispute with neighbor. Karen wasn't happy. 2 days later, I caught her standing at the edge of my drive, arms crossed, wearing her beige trench coat and fake pearl earrings. Her lips pursed as she spoke. "I saw your little interview," she said. "Nice touch with the drone footage. But I hope you understand, this will get very expensive for you." "Truth usually is," I replied. Her eyes flashed. "The HOA has deep pockets, Mr. Carter. And plenty of friends at City Hall." She turned to leave, then looked back. "You could still settle. Let the pipe stay, take the money, and save yourself the embarrassment." I took a slow step forward. "Karen, you crossed my fence once. Don't do it again." Her smile faltered just long enough for me to see something real, not arrogance, but fear. Then she walked away. The court date came faster than expected. January 12th. A small courtroom in Cedar County. I wore my one good suit, the same one I'd worn to my father's funeral. Laura arrived with 2 thick binders and the calm precision of a surgeon. Karen showed up in a cream-colored coat, flanked by her attorney, David Crowley, and half the HOA board. They filled the gallery like vultures in designer clothes. When the judge, Honorable Mary Sanderson, called the case, the air in the room felt electric. Crowley went first, spinning his tail like a salesman. The HOA acted in good faith, he said. The gas line was placed according to municipal records that indicate a shared boundary. Mr. Carter, in obstructing the work, caused substantial financial harm to the entire community. Then it was Laura's turn. She stood, calm as ever, and began with a single sentence. Your Honor, my client owns 100 acres of land. The HOA owns none of it. She laid out the survey, the maps, the photos, and finally, the drone video. When the footage played on the courtroom screen, a low murmur swept through the audience. The trench, the fence posts, the workers, all clearly inside my property. Karen's smile vanished. Judge Sanderson paused the video, leaned forward, and said, Mrs. Whitmore, did you authorize this construction? Karen's jaw tightened. I did, based on information from the board. Did you seek written consent from Mr. Carter? No, Your Honor. But that's all I needed to know. It wasn't over, but in that moment, I saw it in the judge's eyes. She knew. The hearing ended with a temporary injunction. The HOA was ordered to halt all activity on my property until final judgment. And Karen was visibly seething. Outside, snow had begun to fall, silent and soft, covering the courthouse steps like ash. Laura patted my shoulder. We're not done yet, she said. They'll fight back harder. Expect dirty tactics. She was right. Within a week, my mailbox was filled with citations, unkept property, excessive fencing, violation of visual standards. All issued by the Briarwood HOA, signed by Karen herself. She couldn't beat me in court, so she was going to try to bury me in red tape. I started to document everything. Every letter. Every citation. Every voicemail she left pretending to resolve matters civilly. The fight wasn't just about land anymore. It was about control. But she didn't know what kind of man she was up against. I'd built bridges across war zones in the Middle East. I'd faced government audits that could ruin lives. Karen Whitmore thought she could bully me with bureaucracy. She had no idea what patience really looked like. Because when you take everything from a man who's already lost it all, you don't leave him desperate. You leave him dangerous. And soon, I was about to show her just how dangerous I could be. By the time spring crept back over Millstone Ridge, I had learned 2 things. First, Karen Whitmore was relentless. And second, the system she thought would protect her was starting to turn on her. The frost melted, the grass came back green, and the orange pipe beneath my soil sat untouched, a symbol of her arrogance. The court date for the final ruling was set for April 28. But the war between U.S. didn't wait that long. 4 months, she'd been firing off HOA citations like bullets. Non-compliant fencing. Invasive vegetation. Improper property signage. Each one came with a fine. Each one I logged, photographed, and filed with the county clerk. Laura had told me, keep your hands clean. Don't react, just record. So that's what I did. Every move she made became another piece of evidence, another thread in the rope she was tying around her own neck. But the night that truly shifted everything came 2 weeks before the verdict. It was past midnight. Rain hammered against the windows, wind groaning through the pines. I was in my workshop behind the barn when I heard it, a low hiss. Not the wind, not rain. Something else. I followed the sound outside with a flashlight. The beam cut through mist and rain until it hit the trench line near my fence. Mud glistened, and then I saw it, a faint shimmer of gas bubbling through standing water. My chest went cold. The pipeline was leaking. I ran for the shutoff valve at the far end of my property, praying the installation crew had left the cap secure. They hadn't. The valve housing was cracked, cheap plastic where there should have been steel. I shut it tight, heart pounding, rain soaking through my clothes. If that leak had gone unnoticed, if it had reached my generator shed, one spark could have turned my home into a crater. I called the county emergency line and the gas inspector. Within an hour, trucks and flashing lights filled the road. The responders cordoned off the area, sealed the line, and confirmed the worst, unauthorized, uninspected work by the HOA's contractor. By dawn, the story hit the local news. Illegal HOA gas line causes dangerous leak on private property. Homeowner's lawsuit gains momentum as investigation expands. The reporters swarmed Briarwood's front gate that morning. Karen's perfect suburban world cracked right down the middle. When we arrived at court for the verdict hearing, the tension in the room felt different. Crowley looked pale. Karen kept her sunglasses on indoors, a poor disguise for exhaustion. Judge Sanderson took the bench, flipped through the case file, and sighed. We've reviewed all evidence, including the recent gas inspection report. It appears the pipeline was installed without county permits or safety oversight. She looked up at Karen. Mrs. Whitmore, did you authorize that work personally? Karen hesitated. Yes, Your Honor, but I was told the HOA. The HOA, the judge cut in, is not a governing municipality. You had no authority to install public utility infrastructure on private land. The silence that followed was absolute. Laura stood, her voice calm and clear. Your Honor, my client requests full removal of the pipeline, compensation for property damage, reimbursement of legal costs, and punitive damages for willful trespass. The judge nodded. Granted in full. Karen blinked. Wait, what? The HOA will pay $220,000 in total damages, the judge continued, and is hereby ordered to remove all installed utility structures within 30 days. Additionally, Mrs. Whitmore, your personal authorization of the illegal construction warrants referral to the county for further investigation. Karen's face went white. Her lawyer whispered something, but it didn't matter. The gavel fell like thunder. Case closed. Outside the courthouse, the reporters were waiting again. Cameras clicked, questions flew, I said nothing. Laura handled it all, professional as ever. Karen stormed past the crowd, chin high, eyes red. But when our paths crossed on the steps, she stopped. For the first time, she didn't look angry. She looked small. You ruined me, she said quietly. I shook my head. You did that yourself. She opened her mouth as if to argue, then turned and walked away back toward her car, her empire of fences and rules unraveling behind her. A month later, I watched from my porch as a construction crew rolled into the valley, the same company that had installed the line, now forced to dig it up under county supervision. The backhoe bit into the soil, pulling the orange pipe out in long, muddy segments. The land healed slowly, like a wound closing. When they were done, I planted wildflowers along that stretch, sunflowers, coneflowers, black-eyed Susans. By midsummer, the field was a riot of color. The fence stood tall again, repaired and freshly stained. My land was whole. Laura called me one afternoon with the last piece of news. Karen's been removed from the HOA board, she said. State's investigating her misuse of community funds. Sounds like she's selling her house. I didn't respond for a moment. I just looked out at the field, the wind rippling through the flowers. Good, I finally said. Maybe she'll find peace somewhere else. Laura chuckled softly. And you? You finally gonna take a break? Maybe, I said. For now, I'll stick to the quiet. When the call ended, I sat back on the porch steps with a mug of coffee and listened to the wind through the trees. The land was silent again, not the empty silence of loss, but the kind that feels earned. Out here, there were no meetings, no boards, no rules written by people who'd never lifted a shovel. Just the smell of pine, the hum of cicadas, and the steady heartbeat of the earth beneath my boots. Karen Whitmore had tried to take what wasn't hers and learned that some boundaries aren't just lines on a map. They're the line between arrogance and justice. Between power and peace. And in the end, all she found past that fence was the one man who would never let her cross it again.